Hey guys, quick discussion on the various question types that you will see in CAT RC. I mean, quite a few of you had expresses interest that you wanted to watch a video on this, but to be honest, it's actually not that cryptic knowledge. You have to just look at previous year's question papers. And the range of questions is actually not, it's pretty short, okay? There aren't a wide variety of questions that have been asked in CAT in the last few years. Not a wide variety of questions. It's actually pretty limited, and you can categorize them into around 5 or 6 different types. I've made a list of the most common question stems in the last few years, more or less. Okay. There will be the odd exception that I didn't want to include because it's not a pattern, but by and large, a lot of these questions fall under a few, stems. The reason I want to still discuss this anyway, even though I'm not giving it such great importance, because if you read well, doesn't matter how the question is framed, you're going to answer the question. That's what good readers do. They don't really care so much about the question type, or they don't care so much about how the question's framed or how the options are framed, whatnot. If you read well, you'll do everything well. Okay, that's the basic thing about VRC. You have to learn to read well. That's all there is to it. But having said that, this awareness, if you've not already gone through the old CAT papers, which you should have by now, especially if you have access to them, guessing it's not difficult to find these, isn't it? So you should have solved previous year's papers. The reason you should be aware of these question types is multifold. Number one, it helps you segregate your areas of strength and weakness. Okay, some of you are brilliant readers, so if there's a question that is that there are some questions based on what has been mentioned in the passage and you never get it wrong, but you get the reasoning questions wrong. Some of you are brilliant deductionists, okay, like mini Sherlock, some of you. So do deductions well, but then you make silly mistakes because you don't read well, or you're overconfident, or you try to answer questions too fast or from memory, and then you get them wrong. And some of you have a problem with language, so you kind of get it wrong when the question's a little twisted or a little intricately phrased, even though a question would still be asking for something very simple. You get it wrong because you didn't understand the nuance in the question. So it's not a bad idea to actually know what kind of question types are your favorite and what kind of question types you don't do that well in. So see, in this particular slide, for example, look at all these. These are all a similar question. They're all called main theme questions. Okay, which one of the following statements best expresses the point being made by the author? The author's main theme, the author's main claim. Okay, which of the following best reflects the main argument of the fourth paragraph of the passage? Is a variation of the main theme question. Okay, this is more purpose specific. So the difference between the first question and the second question type is, first question is about the overall argument of the passage, the author's main claim, the author's main argument, the central essence of the passage is what the passage is trying to do, okay, or the main argument of the entire passage. So that's the whole passage, okay. The second question, on the other hand, is not about the whole passage. It's a purpose specific question, which is, why is the second paragraph in the passage? Why is the fourth paragraph in the passage? What is the first paragraph trying to do? Or you also have example specific questions, which is a variation of the second question. Example specific question is, the author mentions so and so example in the third paragraph to elucidate the point that, or to illustrate the point that, the author mentions this particular book to explain that, the author says in quotes the whole statement to highlight it to the readers that these are purpose specific or example specific questions. And they are actually the easiest questions to be able to answer, because while you're reading itself, good readers only tend to do this. Okay, subconsciously, when you're reading itself, when you come across an example, you should know that the moment an example begins, the line above that is the reason why the author is talking about the example. Because when you say for example and we give the example, the answer won't be inside the example, why this example has been mentioned. It'll be above the for example statement, right? Similarly, the main argument of a particular paragraph generally will be the last line of that paragraph, okay, or the last but one line, because when you're building an argument, okay, sometimes, okay, it's not a hard fast rule though, because sometimes authors tend to give the main argument in the first line and then elaborate. So if the whole paragraph is talking about the same thing, then the first line is the main argument. If the paragraph is building towards something, the last line is the main argument, which is why you should be good at reading. I mean, there's no hard fast formula here, but a particular so the passage generally has 4 to 5 paras, right? So the Overall, the author is building into one main argument. That's why the main theme's answer generally is a combination of first para, first line, last para, first line, last line, and to some extent, second para, first line, last line, if the first para begins with an example or some statistics which have got nothing to do with the passage. Okay, so first para, second para, and last para, first line, last line, those 6 sentences are vitally important. Also, second and third paragraphs are called the moving paragraphs of the passage because that's where the author comes to the point. So, that's why to answer the question, should I skim and scan? Should I read some parts and leave out some parts? No, you can't do that. You have to read the whole passage. But by and large, the main argument should agree with the last para, first line, last line, and the tone of the last para, because the main argument, the author is trying to build the whole passage towards that. Okay, so watch out for that when you're answering the main theme question. But you should also know individually each para has a purpose, because when the author is building the main argument, okay, why the author is trying to say that, the first para, second para, everything has a purpose, right? So you should be able to, so again, take a step back. Okay, so how are you reading every para is focused around 2 or 3 keywords, okay, nouns. So you have to understand first what each para is talking about. That is the purpose of that paragraph, to talk about those keywords. All those keywords, 2 into 4 or 5 paragraphs, about 10 to 12 keywords, fit into the main idea of the last paragraph. Okay, so that's how a passage is built. Good readers only get it subconsciously, I mean, because you just been reading for a very long time. But if you are only getting into the groove now, watch out for how you're reading each paragraph. You'll have to be able to segregate the ideas of each paragraph in your head. Your paragraph should not be one big mess in your head. It should be separate. It should be very clean. OCD helps here. That obsession to clean out stuff, create the clutter. It's very important for you to remember each paragraph has a separate idea in the form of 1 or 2 keywords, not entire sentences, 1 or 2 keywords. Okay, anyways, this is another interesting question type. This is one of my favorite question types, to be honest. Which one of the following sets of terms best serves as keywords to the passage? Or which of the following keywords gives the sequence of ideas in the passage? Or which of the following set of keywords are perfectly in alignment with the idea flow of the passage? They give you 4 or 5 keywords in each option. You'll have to pick the most important 4 to 5 keywords. It's a pretty common question in the last few years, and I really love this because it fits directly into my style of summarizing a passage. Just one para should be equal to just 1 or 2 keywords. So you literally see those keywords in the answer. Okay, that is one question type which you can do. It's a gift question of sorts for those guys who actually summarize each paragraph with 1 keyword. And some of you keep asking this question: how do I know whether I've understood what I'm reading or not? Should be able to equate a whole paragraph into 1 or 2 keywords. That's how you know you understood the paragraph. If you're unable to, if struggling to do that, it means you haven't understood the paragraph, period. There's no multiple ways of looking at it. Which one of the following statements best captures the sense of the first paragraph? Best captures the sense, essence, purpose, reflects the main argument. All these are multiple ways of saying the same thing, similar to question 2, right? Okay, this last one is a different question type compared to the first 4. These are called data specific questions. Which of the following statements can be regarded as true? Means the answer is there in the passage. It's one of those rare question types these days. Out of the 16 odd questions, only 3 or 4, sometimes if you're lucky 5 or 6, will be data based questions. Okay, so on a very broad level, think of it this way. CAT questions generally, I've noticed, are direct questions or indirect questions. So if you're looking at questions first before reading the passage, observe, okay, I've covered this in VRC FAQ video also. Observe whether it's a direct question or an indirect question. The meaning of direct and indirect is, in the question, you'll see a keyword. That's a direct question, okay? Because you search for the keyword in the passage, you'll get the answer. In the question, sometimes you will not see the keyword, like all the other questions here. You don't see any keywords here, right? And inference CR questions also, you won't see keywords. So if there are no keywords in the question, means that you'll have to also read the options. You'll have to also figure out the difference between each of the options based on what you understood in the passage. So you cannot gauge the difficulty level of that question by just reading the question stem. You'll have to read the options, which it means by default, all indirect questions force you to read the options. Only then you can decide whether it's a difficult question or an easy question, and therefore it's going to get a little tricky. So indirect questions, if there are more than 8 to 9 indirect questions, as has been the case in the last couple of years, so the paper will be CR heavy, basically critical reasoning heavy. More direct questions means it's an easier paper. More direct questions means more people will get the right answers, which means the cutoff will go up. Okay, so that's how you calibrate the difficulty level of the paper. The paper is easier, is the easiest way to know that the paper is easy when there are a lot of direct questions, a lot of keywords, and you can search for the answers. If you're able to search for the answers in the paper, in the passage, without having to make inferences or implications, it means that the paper is easy. If you can't search because the question's testing your understanding of what the author is trying to say, okay, then it's an indirect question or a CR based question. In a CR based question, you'll have to be a little careful, because it's your understanding that is getting tested. Okay, all of the following claims can be inferred from the passage. These are the indirect questions. Okay, inferred from the passage. So the simplest question is, which of the following can be inferred from the passage, right? So out of the four options, only one is an inference. It's also a very dirty question. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage means you should literally know what's happening in the passage to be able to know which statement is true and which statement is not true. It's the same as which of the following are true. The difference between which of the following statements according to the passage are true versus which of the following can be inferred from the passage, both are true or false options. But in one case, you will find the answer in the passage. When I say which of the following can be inferred from the passage, means that one of the options will be true, but you will not find it directly from the passage. You have to understand that it is true based on what the author is saying. So you have to literally know or understand what the passage is doing. So which of the following can be inferred from the passage? Very dangerous question. A trickier version of that is this. All of the following claims can be inferred except, meaning 3 can be inferred, 1 won't be inferred. So 3 are inferences, 1 is not an inference. Okay, so you'll have to check each option whether it can be inferred or not, and from where it can be inferred whether it's true or not. Okay, inferred basically means it's not directly mentioned, but based on other statements you can understand that this is also true. Okay, so I've discussed this at length in critical reasoning basics videos, so please go and watch it if you're not still sure. Which one of the following statements contradicts the arguments of the passage? This is a slightly more advanced critical reasoning question. Okay, so CR inference is directly which of the following can be inferred, which of the following contradicts the argument. So first you'll have to figure out the argument of the passage. Argument is nothing but the main theme of the passage or the author's central idea. This contradicts, it has to be the opposite of the main idea of the passage. Okay, again, that's why it's called an indirect question, right? Because it's not there in the passage. You have to understand the main theme and know what is the opposite of it, and then search for that in the options. So which of the following contradicts the arguments of the passage? Now, which of the following observations a valid conclusion to draw from the statement is the same as which of the following can be inferred from the passage. Okay, except in this case, if the statement is given, just from that one statement, what conclusion can you draw? Very easy question, actually, if you understand critical reasoning. Which of the following is a valid conclusion? Now, in olden days, GMAT language, inference was different from conclusion. But in CAT language, inference and conclusion are almost the same. Conclusion or inference are both what you know to be true, but not directly mentioned in the passage, something that you understand from the information given in the passage. Understand to be true. Okay, not directly mentioned, but you understand it to be true. So whether the author uses the term inference or the author uses the term, the question center uses the term inference or conclusion, don't panic. It pretty much means the same thing. Which are the following? You can, with a reasonable estimation, you can take that as true. Okay, which one of the following scenarios is unlikely to follow from the arguments in the passage? This is one of my other favorite question models. Which of the following scenarios is unlikely to follow? This is what I call further application or a parallel reasoning question. Okay, what is the meaning of a parallel reasoning question? I give you one situation in the passage. These options won't be from the passage. There'll be 4 creative new scenarios. But one of those 4 scenarios will have a logic which is the same as the logic mentioned in the passage. Parallel, that's why it's called parallel reasoning. Okay, for example, how you would have seen these memes these days, right? That India is going to win the World Cup because last time a wicketkeeper got married, and and then Kohli got some century or whatever, and then Dhoni got the World Cup, and this time also wicketkeeper got married in the same year, and then scores, whatever, blah blah blah. That's called parallel reasoning. So we're like, hey, this happened, A happened, B happened, C happened, therefore D happened. This time again the same thing is happening, so India will win the World Cup. All kinds of nonsensical stuff people do, but it's a good parallel reasoning example, right? So similar situations. So these are called further application questions. Which of the following scenarios is unlikely to now multiple ways? Which of the following scenarios represents or reflects what is happening in the passage is directly 4 new options. Which of the following scenarios is unlikely to follow from the arguments in the passage? Like this is given. It's basically saying if the passage is true, which of these will not happen, or which of these won't be true, isn't it? So all different extensions of the same argument or whatnot. Which of the following, if false, could be seen as contradicting the argument? See, if you notice, contradicts the arguments, if false, could be seen as contradicting. Okay, so this is just making the question tougher. On a very broad level, I can only ask you 2 CR questions. Okay, which of the following can be inferred from the passage? Which of the following can be concluded from the passage? Meaning is the same, inferred or concluded. Okay, that is one, inference or conclusion. The second question type I can ask is, which of the following strengthens or weakens the argument of the passage? If the passage has some data, which of the following can be inferred from the data? That is one question type. If the passage has an argument, which of the following can strengthen or weaken the argument? That's the question, second question type. These are the only two questions, CR question types I can actually ask, but I can make variations of that. Instead of saying which of the following can be inferred, I'll say all of the following can be inferred except. Instead of saying which of the following contradicts the argument, I can say which of the following, if false, will be contradicting. Means if true, they will be supporting the argument. So instead of directly saying which of the following strengthens, I'll say which of the following, if false, contradicts. Just twisting the question a little bit. Instead of saying which of the following will weaken, I will say which of the following will invalidate. Meaning is the same. Okay, invalidate the passage, weaken the argument. Similar tones you're looking for. If I want to make it even more tricky, I'll say all of the following. Okay, if false, will strengthen the argument except. Okay, all of the following if false will strengthen the argument except means one if false will not strengthen. Okay, one if true will strengthen. So which of the following will strengthen? This is the very complicated version of asking the same question. All of the following if false will weaken the argument except, 4 times negative, isn't it? All of the following if false will weaken the argument except. So you'll have to solve the equation of that question, but in the end I'm just asking you which of the following will strengthen or weaken the argument. That's it. It's just that all of the following except, if false, all of these are adding more layers over it. So solve the question type first. Don't get too confused. Don't look at the question and panic. Just solve it like a basic equation. Like it's like -2 brackets and then outside one more minus, one more set of brackets and one more minus. We say you can just solve it very quickly. Right? You won't panic. Same thing here also. So, but on a very broad level, I can only ask you these 2 types of CR questions. Okay, if the data is there, what can be inferred or concluded? If an argument is there, which of the following will strengthen or weaken the argument? Strengthening the argument means supporting the argument. Weakening the argument means opposing the argument. That's it. That's all there is to CR. To be honest with you. And then in the context of the passage, which one of the following is not a possible implication of the quoted statement is just another way of saying which of the following is not an inference from the passage. Okay, so just to summarize, direct questions and indirect questions. Okay, where there's a keyword in the question, where there's no keyword in the question. Direct questions, keywords are there with which again direct questions, which of the following can be true from the passage. The author mentions this particular example to explain that. The author uses the metaphor or the or whatever the simile of so and so expression or this phrase for so and so reasons. These are all direct questions because you can go and search for the information in the passage. Indirect questions are again main theme questions. Again, main theme is, we can't even call it indirect, it's a separate category. Main theme, the main argument of the passage, the author's main claim of the passage, the essence of the passage, the central argument of the passage, all different ways of asking the same question. Okay, tone and style questions have not been asked for a while. But if you're answering the main thing, you should know more or less whether it's a positive. Tone's nothing but what kind of mood the author is in. Is he positive? Is he negative? Or is he neutral? If he's positive, is like emotionally positive or data or logically positive, emotionally negative or logically negative, right? So I can be angry, but it's negative, but emotional about it. I can be critical, which is negative, but logical about it. So it depends on whether I'm logical or emotional about something, right? The tones, but can be neutral tones also. Advisory, suggestive tones, for example, are neutral tones, or when didactic tone or pedantic tones, where the author doesn't take a stand. The author is like very neutral, objective tones. So tones basically the mood of the author. Style is basically the way the information has been presented, right? Narrative style or explanatory style or analytical style, argumentative style of writing. A lot of question setters have noticed they get confused between styles and tones. They ask in the question, they ask style. In the options, they give tones, which is kind of stupid. Style is different, tones different. Okay, you shouldn't be confused about them. Styles, how the information has been presented. Tones, the mood of the author. Okay, so they're 2 different things altogether. So main theme question, tone and style, one category. Direct questions are about data. You could search for the answer, one category. CR questions, inference. CR again, broadly 2 types of questions. Which of the following can be inferred or concluded? Which of the following will strengthen or weaken the arguments of the particular passage? Okay, and then twisting that question a little further. And then further application questions or parallel reasoning questions or analogy questions. Which of the following situations is similar to the situation mentioned in the 3rd paragraph of the passage? Means parallel reasoning or something similar. Which of the following reflects the logic used by the author in so and so particular paragraph? Okay, that's the further application question or parallel reasoning question type. Sometimes in the past, I've also been another figure of speech type questions, which have not added in this list because it doesn't get asked commonly. Because I'm also making a video on figure of speeches just to give you a quick idea on most common figures of speech that you would see in reading comprehension passages. Okay, simile, metaphor, analogy, these are all figures of speech. Okay, figure of speech, basically, don't get confused with parts of speech. Parts of speech is grammar. Figure of speech is basically what you read is actually not the meaning of what you're reading. Okay, meaning is different from what you won't take them literally. Basically, that's why we say figuratively speaking, means you should not take the literal meaning of the words. There's something deeper in it. So figure of speech questions, the author mentions the metaphor of so and so in the second paragraph. Helps us understand that. So the author points to a metaphor or a particular paradox or a particular irony. That's called a figure of speech question. So while if you understand the meaning of the word metaphor or irony or paradox, you'll be able to pick the answer very easily. Okay, those are called figure of speech questions. So anyway, these are broadly the most common question types that you've noticed we've noticed in CAT RC in the last few years, 4-5 years. There's actually not a lot of variation. If you're a good reader, you'll have to be able to understand two things. Okay, this is what good happens in good readers' brains. I read 500 words. Of the passage length is usually around 500 words, 520 words at most. It's usually not longer than that. Hasn't been longer. We don't know whether it's going to happen every year, but hasn't been longer in the last few years. So 500, 520 words, a really good reader is actually reading about 1200, 1300 words worth of information because of the inferences that you can draw from those 500 words, right? Which is again why vocab is important, grammar is important, CR is important. For example, a word like condone, okay? I do not condone students watching English movies to learn English. Okay, now so the inference here automatically is based on the meaning of the word condone. Condone is generally supporting a bad thing. So watching movies to learn English is a bad thing. That inference can be drawn only if you know the meaning of the word condone. You can't work out the meaning of the word condone here. Okay, supporting something bad basically. Prescribe and proscribe also. Proscribe is like opposing something bad. So the meaning of the word tells you the inference. So on a broad level, when you're reading a passage, 500 words of data is already given to you. Really good readers also make inferences while they're reading. Okay, this is possible, this is not possible. They read. That's called reading in between the lines. That's why I made the critical reading series to show you how to read. So 500 words, you're basically reading about 1000, 1200 words worth of information. Why is it important? Because critical reasoning questions are increasing in number. More than half of the questions in the last few years have been critical reasoning questions. Okay, that's 8, 9 out of 16 is a big number. So unless you're understanding the argument of the passage, you'll not be able to answer the critical reasoning questions well. So your purpose when you're reading 500 words is to make sure you understand a bunch of things. Number one, what is the author trying to say in these 500, 600 words? Okay, main argument. So it will generally be there in the last paragraph if you understand the last paragraph. Second, what is the author's mood? Neutral, positive, negative. Okay. Third, are there any other inferences over and above what the author is already saying? Is he indirectly trying to tell me anything? Okay, that you should be able to understand. What is he indirectly trying to tell me? Why did he mention this example? Why is he saying this? Why is he saying that? Okay, all of these are very important. All massive complex function equation, right? This whole passage is a complex equation. You'll have to break it down. So when you're reading, how do you know you've read well? If you know the author's tone, if you know what are all the main keywords of the passage, if you can figure out what the main theme of the passage is with or without the options, okay, and you remember the flow of the data. What is the data presented? Why was the data presented? Sometimes that why is given in the passage itself, which makes it an easy passage. Sometimes that why is not given in the passage, which makes it a slightly more difficult passage, CR heavy passage basically. Okay, so these are things you as a reader should be able to understand.